Hello everyone, I'm Duo and welcome back to another video, and today I'm giving you 6 tips and tricks to help you improve your building styles in Minecraft. Now of course there's no real right way to build, and of course quality of builds is subjective. What one person thinks is great, some other person might think is total trash. But these are just general guidelines, you don't really have to follow them to the T. I've tried my best to adapt them to cater to most, if not all, build styles. But of course, if this list isn't right for you, please let me know and I'll probably try and tailor individual advice to you in the comments. But anyway, let's get started. So the first tip I have is to make sure to use detail and, of course, depth when necessary. So obviously this looks not horrible, but it is kind of flat. Even when you have this block variation here, it doesn't catch your eye as much as having a bit of depth. Because if you do have a bit of smooth lighting, the indentation is slightly accentuated. And plus, if you indent the windows like this, it allows you room to actually make some archway details like this without some weirdness happening, and also it allows you some leverage to add some more detail-y bits like this. Now obviously detail does not work for every single thing, and I'll move on to that in a second, but it does go a long way to make your build stick out a whole lot more. So this is a whole lot more memorable than just this. Now, I get that for some people this might be a bit too complex to start off with, so what I would recommend doing is literally just indenting your walls, that's it. Indenting the walls from the pillars, and then you can work on the detail-y stuff later. But my advice is to sprinkle in some blocks that would realistically, like in your headcanon, make sense. So for this wall I went with that this wall's quite old, so parts of it are crumbling off. So then I have bits of cobblestone here to show that parts of the wall have in fact been falling off. And of course, given that it's been here for a while, there has been some growth on the pillars here. So basically, use a bit of interpretation. So basically think about the context of your build and plan some detailing around it. My second bit of advice kind of is a bit different from that, but effectively not every build needs a lot of detail. And this is a thing that I wish I knew when improving my building skills, but effectively, yeah, it really just depends on the type of build that you want to make. So if you're going for this rustic style or like post-apocalyptic style, of course you want detail to accentuate that kind of theme a bit more. But for builds like this, the best way to represent the theme, or best represent modern themes, is to have a clean look. So having blocks of the same color, it may feel weird not detailing things for some people, but it's absolutely fine. I think it looks better when there's little to no detail in the actual blocks themselves. The thing that really gives modern builds their magic is to have a wide variety of shapes. So what I'm saying here is you need to look at the type of build you're making, like have a deep look into what you want to do, and effectively like just have a think about what your specific build style would entail. Obviously, modern builds, typically on their interior, this is where you add a lot of the detail. And even then, it's not something, even then the detailing here isn't gonna be something really complex. It's mostly just come up with a consistent floor pattern and replicate that throughout the entire floor. Add some like decorative furniture here and there using scaffolding, carpet, doors, whatever. But yeah, the inside is, with modern builds, typically what you're really going to be creative with. Now the third one is something that a lot of people often neglect, and I want to make this one very clear, but always pay attention to the landscape around your build. Don't neglect the land around your build, actually incorporate it into your build in some way or another. Now, one way you could do that is do some artificial landscaping to make your landscape fit your build well. Of course, you could just incorporate your build style around your environment, but if you have something like, say, this build inside of a mushroom island, it's gonna look jarring and not quite right. Now obviously you don't need to do something as detailed as this, but maybe just a simple pathway, just acknowledge that the environment around you exists. Now tip number 4 may be slightly more controversial than that, and that is that no block is truly ugly. And what I mean by that is that you should be creative with the way in which you use blocks, specifically ugly ones, or ones that people deem to be ugly. So the terracotta block here. It's useful for like small carpets, but I wouldn't make an entire floor out of it. So I would use those in contexts where they are welcomed. And on top of that, literally on top of that, I've also used blocks that people describe commonly as ugly. So the brick slabs, the terracotta, the plain terracotta, and the polished granite. These are blocks that people typically don't like, but when you blend them in the right way, you can create some quite awesome roof patterns. The block itself isn't bad, it's just the implementation or the use of the block is usually bad. Moving on to other examples here, you have a complete bloodbath using nether wart blocks, red concrete powder, nether quartz ore to represent that, you know, there's some bones in this mush of bio. Yeah, this is gory as hell. But then you've also got, like for example, a burnt down tree. It has some quite creative uses of some of the newer blocks, as well as some blocks that people would never think to use. So for example, bedrock here, nobody would ever think to use that. Obviously you can't do that in survival, but if you're doing a creative build, I mean, if it calls for it, you could use bedrock. There's nothing wrong with doing that, as long as it fits the context of the build. You've got basalt here, you've got polished basalt, you've got coal blocks, so there's really a ton of building blocks here that people wouldn't really think to use, but they work in the context of this build here. That's my advice here. Think outside the box, think of some unusual blocks that typically people don't use, because that there is what's gonna catch people's eye. If you make a typically ugly looking block look really nice. My 5th piece of advice here is to not be afraid to take out the weirdness. Obviously people have seen builds like this all the time, so modern houses, rustic, and after a while it gets pretty monotone and bland. Like, people would not think twice when they see a modern build or a rustic build, no matter how detailed and awesome it looks. So occasionally you want to break out of the norm. You want to create something really weird. So a couple of examples here. I have SpongeBob's pineapple here. I need to work on the lighting here, but this is just an example to show you what I mean. So yeah, don't be afraid to break out the weird. Just do something. Like, if something crosses your mind, and oh, I accidentally didn't finish that. Oh well. But if something crosses your mind, something really weird, and don't hesitate to actually try and build it. Yeah, it might not turn out great. Like, I think this narwhal vomiting rainbows is not my best work, but it's super eye-catching. Anyone who walks across it will look twice. So yeah, next time you get bored of doing the same build over and over again, think about mixing it up a bit. Pick the weirdest thing from your brain and just build it. My final bit of advice here, I've included a bit of birch and a bit of scaffolding here, which probably isn't the best example, but my advice here is to basically do everything in your power to not lose motivation. So what I would say is, like, over the years, like, sometimes haven't finished a build because I've lost motivation, and obviously a build can't look very good if it's unfinished. So you need to do everything in your power to stay building something for so long that it actually gets completed. That way it'll actually look excellent rather than just unfinished, and you would actually catch people's attention. Now, there are some things that you could do to mitigate the possibility of becoming unmotivated, like only building something if you're really sure you want to build it, or really sure that you want to take on that project in the long term. Another thing is that you could play on a multiplayer server and build things or only build things when they have a distinct purpose, like building a furnace room, or having like a redstone contraption that you want to cover up. But yeah, there are many ways you could go about doing it, but just find ways not to lose motivation, because I assure you, if you lose motivation in the middle of the build, it will not look as good as it could be if it were finished. So that was it. Those are my 6 tips and tricks to improve your building skills in Minecraft. If you did find this video helpful, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and maybe even subscribe for more. But anyway, I'm Duo, and I will see you, hopefully, in the next video.